Currents Live. Welcome to Alternating Currents Live. I started before the thumbs up. Welcome to Alternating Currents Live. And this is the first concert in the season for this year. And it's a pleasure to have Lia Kohl and Metzger this afternoon. Lia was going to be playing here 3 years ago with Macy Seward, April of 2020, and then we paused for a while. And Lia was back last year with the bridge, and we had a chance to hear her in the gallery here, and it was quite exceptional that evening with another cellist. We had two cellists in the bridge ensemble. Who was the cellist? I don't remember. He was
Eckhart Park Pool.
That's right. It was wonderful. And I know from coming here, I mean, music's been happening in this room in little pattern, this gallery for 40 plus years. And among the first concerts I came up here from Chicago here was featured some phenomenal cellists. Tom Coro was here in the 80s. And ever since then, I've had a particular ear for a fondness for hearing a cello in its room. We've had many cellists over the years, beginning with Mr. Coro. And so hearing Lia Kohl play last year was a real treat and added to those memories. So it's a pleasure to have you back today. And I'm going to turn the whole program over to Elizabeth and Lia, and I'll be on the way. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Hello, thank you so much, Hal and Mike and Marla. It's so wonderful to be here. We're just going to introduce ourselves a little bit and sort of talk a little bit about the projects that we're weaving together tonight, and then you'll get to hear some beautiful music. So yeah, first, should we do solo first and then? Okay. This is my first stop on a tour for my second collection of poems, Lying In. And it comes out April 11th, but I'm really excited to see that they got some books here. And this collection came out of 2 bed rest pregnancies where I was really bedridden for the majority of them. It's not at all about the narrative of that experience so much as the sort of perspective shift that that experience led me to have, both in ongoing experiences, but also in reflecting back on childhood and basically the intensification of the stakes of the moment. So I'm really excited to read from those poems, and then together we will collaborate. But do you want to introduce your solo?
Sure,
Okay.
yeah. And I just put out an album called The Ceiling Reposes. I don't have any copies with me, but it's kind of centered around samples of live radio that I took on a residency outside Seattle. So it's radio samples kind of braided in with other musical bits, and so I'm going to be playing some of that music. And then together we're gonna kind of embark in front of you on a new collaboration together.
We'll talk a little bit more about that one, I think, before we do it. But right now, you'll just take in the music.
Okay. Thank you.
One exit. In 1 or 2 lives, I opened the door with the prize, only to find the prize was not worth the life. I wanted the door. Brave mahogany door, you be my fortune. Teach me to understand the cry in your grain, the suffering circles by which your tree wisdom is known. I was superior with handles, gentle with thresholds. Then this. Choices at morning hours I usually skip, but there is a little cash flow of beauty where there is almost no more water, and there is not room and light enough to stand behind the second and listen anymore. I am going through the language of me now. I am flipping open the dictionary of myself with my tongue to find your first word. In the torture of a foyer, doorless for entering, I am entering none. I just want to take in that wordlessness for that beauty for longer. It's not every day that as a poet you get to read with music. I feel like that's what we're all aiming for. So yes, just forgive me for a moment. Yeah, I'm going to read poems from Lying In, and I'm going to start with a poem that I hope speaks back a little bit to what I felt just now, which was a kind of rebirth or birth of silence in a way, to walk into that after it ended. So this is a birth poem, but long before I actually thought about having a child, I always imagined that maybe giving birth would be an opportunity to remember, like a kind of muscle memory for being born, that you would get as close as you possibly could to the memory of what it was like to be born. So this poem is for that. First wound kept open. The thought of all the grass blown over to one side hurts me. That wind can do that. I must have gotten to him first, though he pushed out against the pouch in me I now call soulless. Of everyone I've met on earth, I always find they got here first, and will they teach me their good reason for staying? I would discipline a comet against my way of leaving, push it out of sky after sky, and after every loss on earth, the baby I was would come back. That's what it means to be lovable, to give oneself whole again, whole birth, whole fist, whole flower, but only what fits harmlessly whole in the mouth. The baby comes and goes, comes back to weed me of my body, feeds my bald birdies what's not for me to know. I had hoped all my animosity toward men would lead toward safety in one, who would wake me before I hit the wooden world and rock me there to say what violence had not yet come. One of the opportunities I had on bed rest, which was, it felt like the present tense was sort of suspended for a really long time, but one of the opportunities that gave me was to kind of have my past and my future feel a lot closer together. So I was thinking a lot about having been a child, and then I was also thinking about the possibility of having a child. Both felt very equally real and unreal, and they got to live together for me in this imaginary space of a playground, which I imagined as a place. I realized as I was on bed rest that it's really a place you don't go to unless you are a child or with a child. So my child self and my future child sort of live together in this poem. You've been on earth so long already. All my life, all I've wanted was to be myself and someone else. Not theirs, but them. My shame about this greed made me hesitant with other children. I wanted what they wanted, but apart. I tried to make it, spooned what I could into shallow mental dishes I stacked all night and poured through my neediest hole, which opens only for medicine or extreme misunderstanding. My teeth browned from too much thirst too late. My eyes bulged from noticing what I wasn't meant to be. There was a playground I went to and can't take you. The first thing I did daily was look for a place to hide or flee. There were plenty of gates and wide enough trees, but I stayed off-center, just beyond the sprinkler's range. The others played until they snacked around me. Sometimes they cried. Sometimes they looked consoled by what they couldn't have. No, not now. The boundary of things, the boundary of time. I wish this for you. Come soon, to be withheld. They were so freely asking for more world. So during this, these two pregnancies, obviously a lot of other things happened, and one of the doublings, well, I should say that the first pregnancy, I really felt this was a singular experience, right? That this was not going to recur. And of course, poetry is a slow process, and writing it, I was still writing it when it actually happened to repeat. It was a different experience, but it was very similar. And so that mirroring also overlapped with the loss that unfortunately mirrored of two people that were very close to me, two poets who, if you don't know their work, you should go check it out, Lucy Brock-Broido and Max Ritvo. And Lucy was my teacher and Max was my best friend, and we wrote our books together. And so while the grief over their losses intensified the kind of fear and loneliness that I felt, it actually was also paradoxically possible that in my isolation, I could feel very close to them, even though they were dead. I felt extremely in their company still, and so a lot of these poems speak to them, and that was a sort of impulse to speak, was to still stay with them. This poem is for Lucy, and the title comes from a Kafka aphorism in which he imagines what heaven might be. Maybe heaven is just the impossibility of crows. The poem is called The Impossibility of Crows. Your death has just begun, but it is not spoken of. It speaks in odd weathers like a second first love. As if the snow could fall for real here, as if you would deign to visit me through sun. There are no directions. The edges of your death are smudged and round, like ash or a watch whose accuracy is the least of its worth. There is no clear ill will. There is no bronzy heaven. You will come to me instead, though I never came to you, won't you? It's not too late yet. There hasn't been blood or sex, not even the spirit or splinted ambition. Today, I will stay for just the last, unafraid, adoring avalanche of you, as if my life had wound itself up and let go with yours. A made metal crow, acting, born, choosing its crack time, then tiptoeing off your branch of the world. The next poem is for Max Ritvo. So I finally slept. At first I was afraid of what felt like mutual need, but soon his initial comfort was like corn silk, stripped with the ear and compelled to the beautiful dead. He had evolved too, he said, as any irregularity in a mammal, and had crafted forever into an answer of milk from his bodilessness that no one would drink. I showed him what still swayed inside me and how grueling it is to harbor someone's thirst rather than the drink. He didn't mind that I had not believed him. Like a sleeved arm into an ocean suddenly full of another power of movement, and then, with all suddenness revoked, he put me to sleep with a simple, asymmetrical gesture. No patting or sweet partings, just the exponential side of his face on my face. And he never came back for me, faithful. Another sort of strange experience of bed rest was that I did start to pray, and I sort of belittled myself or laughed at myself or felt embarrassed about that, because I'm the kind of person who in non-bed rest life usually only prays, as I did last night, in turbulence, severe turbulence, and then I otherwise say I'm a non-believer or I'm not sure, and it always feels a little bit, I hope I'm forgiven, but I came to find that I forgave myself at least, because I decided that something about that instinct to have a relationship with God was connected, for me at least, with how I imagine we either invented or discovered there was a God in the first place. So for me, the instinct to believe was a sort of holy thing. And this poem is called The God Incentive. He kept me through childhood. There was a reason he kept me from sin, like a biscuit warming in the oven. It's okay, I tell the rain, to keep him a theory, but bring him down once in a while. It's okay to be honest or selfish, but find the spot where you sink a little into the velvet stadium seat of secrets other secrets have rubbed away. See, I've been alone and didn't know it, waiting on the inside glass of a trafficked world where one mistrust passes another with a long yellow horn that no hand can quiet. Something other than science is pressing down on my night watch, saying, "Sing here," instead of signing off this hour. Ride the hard part, that is the good part, as many holy animals know. I'm going to read 2 more poems from Lying In. This one is an homage to a creature that gives me a profound feeling of fear and disgust, the roach. I'm a New Yorker, and I know they exist everywhere, but I feel a special kindred relationship. And I've always been terrified of roaches. They've never entered my poetry, or they didn't until I went back to New York for the first time with a newborn. And there's something about the culture, I mean, it's understandable, but there is something about the culture of having a newborn in which sterilization and protection and fragility are so at the forefront of your head that something about seeing this roach really became a wild imagining, and that's this poem, Roach. The quickness of living, the quickness of wanting to kill something. Forget dreams, they attack me, and I welcome their landings, as I'd welcome a gas mask filled with all our unsayable thoughts. Kiss me again without being asked or asking if I still love. How to possess an exoskeleton, earth kitchen, shiny brown God's house, guts hollowed. I don't know what marriage means at 2 a.m. with 6 or 7 roaches vying for my mouth and other openings. If someone handed me a microscope, I might wake up. A microphone, I might stop and listen. If you're not breathing on your own by the middle of this lifetime, it isn't worth the privilege of lifting your feet. I made you. I make to lay myself out like a glue trap, safe. The exterminator says they are checking out the new smell of our baby in the holy sliver where our bodies don't touch. I don't think he would hurt them now that he understands them. I don't think you would hurt me, though I've killed you many times either. And I'll read the last poem from the collection, which is called Desire, and it's about the return to a kind of desire that was really on hold for a long time because of bed rest and fear, and how coming back to it was also a change because we shared a new kind of love for these children. Desire. It is for you I put the children to bed, or come, I will keep the house awake for you. The floor is fluttering with tongues. I step through and you step after me, laughing. These are toys. Isn't it obvious how we've changed? I have no more use for pure feeling. You escape directly behind my head. Little vitrines in the closed museums not being looked at. I would die to be their objects. The children left me. You say they came. What could you possibly do for my body when I am in 2 separate rooms, breathing? Thank you. Thank you. So now we get to switch gears into a collaboration. This part is very exciting to me because we've never actually done this collaboration in a room together, so it feels very exciting. I asked Lia and I tried to collaborate for a long time, and it wasn't until Lia made me realize that we were so invested already in reading and listening to each other's work that we were already starting to collaborate. So I then, shortly after she freed me of those worries, I looked up a phobia. I'm often looking up phobias because I feel I have many of them. I don't know how you feel, but one of the ones I found was called athazagoraphobia, and I may be pronouncing that completely wrong, but to me that first part, athazagor, became a mythic place to me. That Z in it just felt like it was some kind of physical place. And what agoraphobia is the fear of forgetting or being forgotten. And for me, this was really significant because, I just have never thought of those two things as the same. So the idea that there's the same fear for being forgotten and forgetting was interesting. And then, of course, I also started thinking about just art making generally and how so much of it is like sort of based on the idea in some romantic sense of memory or being remembered, some part of yourself being remembered, or an elegy remembering someone else. And so how does forgetting play into that? Is it blurrier than we thought? And then Lia had some interesting.
Yeah, so talking about this idea, we were talking about art making and our practices, and I brought up the subject of improvisation, which is a really big part of what I do, and how improvisation is kind of like an eternal present, eternal forgetting, and eternal remembering. You're remembering all the things that you've experienced and responding to that, but in time.
It's beautiful.
So I'm going to improvise in response to these poems that Elizabeth has written. I think there are 7 of them.
Yeah, there are 7, and I'll just say one thing before I read them, and then I won't say anything more because the music will be what hopefully will deliver them to you. So I'll just say that these ones, the ones I selected for tonight, do all have to do with the same sort of general topic for me, which is my son experienced what you could call a regression of some sort, whether it could be explained medically or psychologically in all sorts of ways. But he really, during the pandemic, he really forgot a lot of what he knew, words and things he could do. And luckily, fortunately, a lot of this has come back for him. But it was a really sustained time where I realized that mystery was real. There's all sorts of answers, but also none of them were answers. And so I had not addressed this. I found it very difficult, and I didn't even know if I wanted to address this in poetry. But I think after we discovered this term together, I started thinking about how he had experienced a kind of forgetting that I couldn't understand, and that I had not realized that I myself was afraid in that process of being forgotten by him in some way if he was somewhere else in this mythic place, which to me is a Thazagor. And if not for the word joining those two ideas together, I never would have thought about my own role in it and how. So these poems are not about his experience, which I cannot claim, but my relationship to them, which was very much up close and incredibly distant. So I'll start with the first one, and then after I read each one, I'll pause and Lia will improvise. Hellflowers. What they took away from your ears grew in mine. Hellflowers on the hill of listen, listen. There was a bugle left on the hill as well, but it was not beautiful unless blown. What they don't know about us is our dark red scab just before the drum we do keep, like a late withering pleasure to be new when you don't understand where you've been. I confuse you with my body. Every feather is sexless. Everything that wanted pressure now lightly dropped from one done flying. Clouds do not rain, but come apart. How freeing it should be to not have died, imagining the fowl you once belonged to, that you are still part of one who flew short distances, no longer useful, no longer enough, When I turn off the light, your former milestones cheep in faraway trees. After, in my bed, I detach myself like a capsized ship. The weightless sail of you, which should be in the other room, is nowhere, is glowing white against the muddy walls of Athazagor. While you are there, I never come. I touch myself, you understand. Don't make me. When I told you the crab on the beach was dead, you asked me, what's dead? I said, this is his shell, but you must have heard soul. A year-long misunderstanding. A summer later, unable to sleep, you said, no, you told me the body's the part that goes, the soul stays. And I said, no, you have it backwards, the shell stays and becomes the beach again. I waited for you to ask after the soul, where the crab goes. Practiced in my head an inconsolable hour, I don't know, or nowhere, scraping my mortal voice like green meat, when suddenly you shot up from the covers, done crying. So the going is forever? My mallard. When I undress at the window facing the pond, my motion is tossing him grain. The first time he came, but now he has learned to ignore me. Green swiveling head, the eye of all doctors, blinking with lust they feel for other lost mothers. He ignores my bored son. Thank God my son has grown bored again, catching my clothes with his face, believing I cannot find him. When he yawns now, I look in the dark of his mouth for wherever thought exited. I love how his lips seal after, then ajar, how I know he is mine again, always about to speak. My mallard does not know what happened. How can I blame him? I've never once brought bread. Besides, he is mourning. His greenless, unbeautiful mate has gone missing below him. Who knows what broke her neck, now shipwrecked with water? But the loss is not mine. Nothing happened to me. Black goat. There was a black goat, and a mile later, 12 brown goats on the lava rocks. All of them were saying, "Get out," but I didn't know how. All homes had turned into funeral homes, and I didn't have a body to bury. But I consoled my son when I could. I said, "Don't worry, there will be another goat on the road." Finally, I saw a white one with brown spots, and for a moment we smiled and held hands. Then he said, "How many goats did we not see?" Then even those ones started shouting at me. I'm going to read two more poems, and these ones are prose poems, but I just have to say that it's a really amazing experience to be in my own poems, reading them to you, and absolutely transported at the same time. Which parts were always true? Once after breakfast, we emptied a milk carton, filled it with water, and froze it. In the evening, I cut the cardboard away from the block of ice and dropped it into the bath with you. We had forgotten to put in toys, which the prism was supposed to tantalize you toward, but you didn't mind. You desired the ice, the way it broke into sharp triangles before dissolving into smooth tablets. Surprise, I let you catch and watch the forms change and disappear. When the last edge became water in your hand, you looked at your hand like it soon would morph, before blaming it for staying the same. You screamed, and I did not even comfort you. You who proved I was a mammal all along. I did not call upon science or wrap you in a towel as you mourned, not understanding you were also melting. Years later, we sit on cold sand, unbraiding seaweed just to braid it together and pull it from a swarm of flies. The beach remains unfazed. When you scream for no reason, I scream too. How lying to you saves you from my disappointments. Sunflowers. It is not unusual, I've heard, for a loved child to frenzy the non-human world. I consider our son's painting of sunflowers so kinetic it resembles a family running away, or the moment he ran back to us. The faces in the distance lose the features of faces. I must be the smallest one behind, while he is most detailed with the red of a tongue about to speak. His petals bleed yellow hair or a cape blown back by humiliation, turning between he was born this way and a tragedy. His hair a year later looks dark green to me, shading my face when he crawls between us for sunrise. His leaves are the arms I once thought we would carry him with, passing him back and forth to his father like art. On the wall, without opposable thumbs, we end up just joining or avoiding our own stems. When he says he is scared now, we immediately call him brave. I ask what he remembers about forgetting, and he takes my hand, leads me outside. The rain makes the world smell like it knows us. Yeah, thank you. This was it was really special to share this beautiful space with you. And if anyone has questions or comments, or we can just float around.
Yeah,
And,
there's copies of the book.
copies of the book, yeah. And are there copies of your? No. Oh, okay.
They're online. You can find them. They exist. Just not with me. Thank you to Woodland Platinum for having us.
Thank you so much.
Did you consider doing the poetry and music simultaneously?
That's a great question. I feel like over the course of knowing each other, we've considered every possible iteration of collaboration, and this is just the one that kind of organically came up. I think partly because we're not in the same place or space, so this felt more possible. I think what we would love to do next is even do, like we've talked about, doing a residency together somewhere where we can have more time to actually make at the same moment in the same place, and that might allow the performance of that to more organically be simultaneous, I think. Yeah. Thank you.
Can you just talk about the technology that you're using over there?
Oh, yeah, well, some of it is just the radio, playing radio. And some of it, you never know what you're gonna get. But some of it I'm transmitting via a little FM transmitter to the radio. Does that answer your question?
Is that, and then the
Oh, and then
Bass
this
device,
is
yeah.
the little synthesizer
what's new and headed in it.
I like the line between playfulness and whatever else we have here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's hang out.
Yeah.